Next up is Sujai Hajela. He's the Vice President and General Manager for Wireless Networking Business Unit, Networking Services Group at Cisco. And as I talked about this morning, the twin peaks are cloud and mobility. And Sujai is going to talk about creating a seamless environment in the wireless space and creating a sort of a stronger mobility environment. So please welcome Cisco's Sujai Hajela.
So good morning, New York. So how are we doing today? I like it. Before I begin, I have some questions. So we'll do a raise of hands. How many of you in this room have at least one mobile device? Mobile device, not including a laptop, but a smartphone, a tablet, a Kindle Fire. I like it. I like where this is going. How many of you in this room, again a raise of hands, have at least two or more mobile devices? Great. One last question on the mobile device number. How many of you in this room, and come on, let's not be shy, have 4 or more mobile devices in this room? Yes, I see some hands. Thank you. Another question. How many of you have used one of these mobile devices to check on your email or to access your corporate resources today morning? Yeah, exactly. So if you think about it, this mobile device is actually redefining the way we live, the way we work, and the way we socialize. It's frankly started becoming an interface to the way we communicate with the world. I actually would exaggerate it a bit more. I firmly believe that we're actually falling in love with our mobile devices. Raise of hands. Great. So, if you look at what this all means, the main reason of why we are kind of falling in love with this device is that we expect the same seamless experience regardless of where we are. Whether we are at home, whether we are at work, or whether we are at a soccer game, watching a game. This expectation is leading to a rapid explosion of mobile devices which are connecting to the network. Let me actually show you some statistics on what I mean by this rapid explosion. This one says that by 2015, the mobile data, just the mobile data, would be 3 times the global internet data which was available on that network in 2005. You'd say, by the raise of hands, by some people there who had actually more than 4 mobile devices, doesn't seem to be that astounding. Okay, let's take it up a bit. If you look at the expectation of the amount of just the mobile data in 2015 compared to 2010, 26 times. Now that's getting interesting. And for me, one of the most astounding statistics, and actually Robert spoke about this, about 4.3 devices per person. It is expected that in the next 4 years, 15 billion devices will be connecting to the network. 15 billion. That is an astounding statistic. So what does this all really mean? If I think about it, if I personalize this number to what it means for me, so on one hand, I'm expecting this personal seamless experience as a consumer. I want to be able to use my mobile device, regardless of where I am, to access my corporate resources or to access my personal data. On the other hand, if I wear the hat of an IT administrator, I need to ensure that I have the right mobility architecture in place to deliver on that seamless experience. So, on one side is the seamless experience, and on the other side is the mobility architecture as an IT administrator, which I need to worry about to enable the seamless experience. So what I'm going to do today is actually make it really simple. We're going to simplify this whole seamless experience and the backend systems required by taking a very simple example. The example is going to be a day in a life of a guy called Francesco. Francesco is a doctor. He's an Italian, and he loves his espresso. So what we are going to do is take an example of what a seamless experience entails for Francesco, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to touch upon the systems which are coming into play in the back end. Now, let's talk about Francesco. He loves his mobile device like we all do. So some of you may know this new tablet got launched yesterday, 4S, had the new A5 chip on it, seems to be making a better gaming experience. But let's come back to Francesco. He loves his mobile device, so he goes to the store and buys this new tablet which has been launched. Now, guess what he does next? He goes to his hospital, goes to the IT administrator, shows off this new gadget, and says, by the way, Joe, I'm going to be using this device to be connecting onto the network. And the IT administrator says, sure, go connect onto that network. So what happens now? Now is the fun part which begins, right? What happens is, as soon as this device connects onto the network, the point to note is Francesco is an existing employee, which means he's got existing credentials. The device gets onboarded onto the network. It gets connected to an 802.11n network. User gets authenticated, in this case, or his credentials, Francesco. The device is fingerprinted. Corporate policies are applied, and enterprise applications are onboarded onto the device. A very simple process of looking at what's going on. What happens next? This device needs to have a contextual policy. And policy is being defined based on device type, based on user, based on location. Now to keep this example simple, I just took few attributes, but frankly, as you all know, this could be a lot more. So now, where are we in Francesco's day in life of a new tablet he bought? He's been onboarded, policies have been defined for him. The key part to note is, to do these things, there are certain back-end systems which are coming into play. To enable this seamless experience for Francesco at work, you need an 802.11 network which can withstand the challenges of mobility. Frankly, in a hospital environment, it gets even more exciting, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. Second is identity-based access control. You also heard Robert mentioning the same thing and the demo on the single sign-on. But identity-based access control is becoming extremely important in our ability to offer a seamless experience. And last but not the least is mobile device management. So mobile device management, just to keep it very simple, the ability to manage this mobile device, having the capability to install applications, wipe out data if this device gets lost, and all that fun stuff. But I promised you that I'm going to keep it extremely simple. So we got the device onboarded, we've got the policies defined, and now Francesco is attending to his patients with his new shiny tablet, and his contextual policy has been defined from an applications perspective that when he is at work, he has got full access to the electronic medical records. He's got full access to mobile telepresence so that he can do his video sessions with his coworkers or with a nurse, email, and instant messaging. Again, to keep it simple, I've just kept it to these are the 4 applications we're going to be talking about, and he's got full access. Now, what is Francesco going to be doing using this tablet? He can look at the electronic medical records, look at the x-rays, do a directory lookup, or even have an IM session. Now, to enable this seamless experience in the hospital, at work, through his tablet, let's talk about what's required in the back end. What's required in the back end is an 802.11n network, which is able to withstand the challenges of mobility. I said this before also. A hospital environment is a mixed mode environment, not only in frequencies, but also in devices which are coming on. For the technical geeks, you've got the 1 spatial stream, 2 spatial stream, or 3 spatial stream devices. You've got to make sure that that 802.11n infrastructure can offer the same performance regardless of the device which is being spoken about. It has to be optimized for video, and spectrum intelligence has to be built in. I was just talking to a CIO yesterday, and he was talking about the fact that they had these voice badges. I'm not going to take the name of the company, and their frequency was actually interfering with all the other devices in the network. And what was happening is when the doctor was trying to page the nurse on this Wi-Fi voice client, they were not able to. And this is not something we can afford in a hospital environment. The next thing which is enabling this seamless experience for Francesco in that hospital is identity-based access control. We spoke about this some time back. But from an IT infrastructure perspective, what is also important is to make sure that you've got a management system for the infrastructure, and more importantly, a service assurance system which can give you visibility of what's going on in the network and what you need to do if things start going wrong. And if you had branches in the hospital, of course, WAN optimization. So now Francesco, is having a good experience with his tablet, his mobile device. It's now getting to be, 2 o'clock, and he decides, remember I told you, Italian, loves his espresso, wants to head a couple of blocks down to the coffee shop. The coffee shop has a hotspot. When Francesco is at that coffee shop and he wants to access corporate resources, now that contextual policy is becoming the roaming policy. That roaming policy is a business policy which has been defined by the hospital, and what it says is Francesco, when he's in his coffee shop, will not have access to electronic medical records. He'll have access to mobile telepresence, he'll have access to email and instant messaging. So, in the coffee shop, enjoying his espresso, and guess what happens? He gets a page from his nurse. So Francesco looks at the page, acknowledges the page, and then gets into a video chat session with the nurse to talk about the patient in question. So, the key part, and you're probably seeing the trend, the key part to enable the seamless experience for Francesco in this coffee shop is the back-end systems which are working behind the scenes. Hotspot 2.0. Just a raise of hands. How many of you have heard about Hotspot 2.0? Okay. How many of you have heard about a standard called 11U? Okay, some of you. Great. So what's important is when you are sitting onto this coffee shop, and let's say in this coffee shop the hotspot is actually being enabled by a service provider. When you get onto your device, today, if you're connecting to the Wi-Fi hotspot, you have to enter some credentials or log on to that hotspot. But with 11U or with Hotspot 2.0, you have an agreement with the service provider, you've got the service provider's phone, and you connect right onto that hotspot, or what's normally often also termed as trusted Wi-Fi. It is important that the infrastructure to enable that seamless experience supports Hotspot 2.0. Of course, an 802.11n network is important. Now, the important point also is that the fact that Francesco is in a coffee shop, which is not in his four walls in the hospital, when his data is coming in, it needs to be checked for any malicious content which may be coming in. Hence, you may need web security. Again, identity-based access control continues to be a key hallmark from the back-end management systems. VPN for secure access, and collaboration and UC for video. Now, if this nurse was at one of the branches, remember the hospital branch I spoke about? WAN optimization tools will also come into play. So as you can see, to enable the seamless experience, various technologies are coming in the back end. So Francesco attends to his patients, his call is done, and now he walks back to the hospital. He goes back to the hospital and orders a blood report for one of his patients. And then he remembers that he had promised his wife and son that he'll be at their soccer game. So he says, okay, now here's the expectation part. He says, okay, I've ordered that blood report. When I'm on the soccer field, I'll be able to check the results. No big deal. So he goes to the soccer field, and when he's on the soccer field, the policy which is dictating his access is now the remote policy. So we had the policy at work, we had the policy at the coffee shop, and now we have a policy on the soccer field. Here, he's allowed access to electronic medical records. But the hospital policy does not allow him access for mobile telepresence. This could be a business agreement between the service provider and the hospital, where due to bandwidth issues or certain other reasons, they've decided that we will not be allowing mobile telepresence when you're coming onto a cellular network. You've got email and you've got instant messaging. But to, again, enable the seamless experience on the soccer field, when Francesco needs to check the blood report, the important part is what's happening in the back end. Again, what's happening in the back end is identity-based access control. That you guys have probably figured out by now. Every time I bring up this policy icon, rest assured I'll have this identity-based access control in the back end. You've got VPN for secure access, but now, more importantly, is also an intelligent packet core. That intelligent packet core is making sure that the data is getting aggregated, subscriber management is happening at the right place, and the data which does not need to go right back into the core of your mobile infrastructure doesn't need to go right in there. It gets tunneled off beforehand onto the internet. This is extremely critical from a service provider perspective. So now Francesco is at the soccer field. He's been able to check the blood report, and you know what? He's been able to watch the soccer game too. The soccer game is over. The family heads back home, and at home, the family sits down for a nice, relaxing dinner. When Francesco is at home, again, a teleworker policy is now coming into play. And in this policy, he has full access to all the resources. Now, the family is enjoying the dinner is over, and you know, one thing happens after we've done our shows. Everybody goes back or scatters to the room. Everybody in the family just goes back to the rooms, and then I can tell you about my family, and maybe you don't want to raise your hands, but I'm sure it's true for yours too. Everybody gets back onto the network. How many? Come on. Yeah. So, when everybody is getting onto that network, your home network needs to make sure it can take care of the traffic which is being generated. Now, in this case, what we have done is in the home network, Francesco has configured his network for personal use, for the family, and for work use. When he's using it for work, it is his extension of his enterprise, right? So the network needs to make sure that when he's checking the patient records or he's planning his next day, he has the top priority from the perspective of access onto that network. Because I can tell you this, his son may be playing the Call of Duty, and I think Call of Duty version 4 is coming out in November, if I'm not mistaken. But what I know from my family and my personal experience, it really hogs the network bandwidth. And I don't know how many of you have played this game, but if you have a latency issue, you actually start losing. Okay? So guess what the son is doing? He's trying to get as much as he can. But I think, frankly, the doctor's access is probably more important. Would you agree? Okay. If he was checking my records, absolutely. So what happens is, in the back end, while you're enabling these services, it is important to make sure that you've got an 802.11n network, of course, for connectivity and making sure the appropriate QoSs can be set, but also a full services home router. This is often a misstep. When you're doing the teleworker architecture, this is a misstep which is important to make sure that we don't do it as the mobility explosion continues to happen more and more. And of course, UC and collaboration applications. So if you take a look at this example, we spoke about Francesco at work, at a coffee shop, at a soccer field, and home. If you look at it, there are many parallels which exist in different verticals. I spoke about healthcare today. It could be retail. Retail, more and more, when you go in, your mobile device now starts becoming not only a frequent shopper card, but also a coupon delivery mechanism based on the analytics of your shopping behavior. Insurance, financials, and education. So I've taken some verticals, but you can actually look at your work behavior, and you'd be able to see that you're expecting the seamless experience, and to expect that seamless experience, there are certain things coming into the back end. What is important, or what is key, is to understand that the seamless experience needs a strong mobility architecture to support it from an IT administrator's perspective. If you look at the home, we spoke about certain technologies which are coming into play. The technologies, 802.11n, full service router, and UCN collaboration. At work, again, an 802.11n network which can withstand the challenges of mobility, identity-based access control, infrastructure service assurance systems, and mobile device management. At the coffee shop, which actually gets extremely interesting, is Hotspot 2.0, which is critical. The 11n network, web and email security, identity services management, VPN, and collaboration applications. At the soccer field, again, identity-based access control, VPN, and the intelligent packet core. So what does this all mean for us? What it means for us is, if we want to enable the seamless experience, we need to define, whether we are an enterprise or a service provider, a clear mobility architecture. And that mobility architecture entails some of these technologies working together, working in tandem to deliver the seamless experience. From a Cisco systems perspective, we are enabling this end-to-end mobility architecture today, starting right from the infrastructure layer, where you look at a wireless LAN mobility system which can offer you the high performance, the spectrum intelligence, the client acceleration, regardless of what clients are coming onto the network. At a network services layer, you've got Hotspot 2.0, 11R, 11U, the firewalls, VPNs, and various security technologies coming into play. And if you start looking at the optimization, the WAN optimization technologies. At the same time, to manage this whole infrastructure and network services to ensure that there's visibility to the mobile experience, you got the Cisco Prime Management System and Identity Services Engine. So from my perspective, in closing, what I want you to look at is, if you want to enable the seamless experience as an IT administrator, you have to define your mobility architecture. Cisco is bringing simplicity to this mobile experience. I hope you enjoyed today's keynote. I hope you found it informational. And for me, more importantly, I hope you found it simple to understand and simple to digest. My endeavor today was to take an example of a day in a life and really break it down to the fact that this actually need not be as complicated as some may make out to be. I wish you all the very best on your seamless mobile experience, and have a great day. Thank you.
Sujai, thank you so much.